Today I review The South Shall Rise Again by Victory Point Games. It is a war game, or I should say a mini war game, a combat game with a hybrid theme, something between history and fantasy. It is set in the American Civil War, but in a version of the Civil War where the Confederates have zombies. And in the game the players represent soldiers of the Union that somehow found themselves separated from their main group and surrounded by zombies that are coming at them. The zombies are controlled by the AI of the system, the players control the soldiers, and they can play the game cooperatively or competitively. The game takes place on this board here with some terrain features, but pretty much open terrain. There are several possible scenarios, 5 of them, with scenario cards that give instructions about the setup and victory conditions and things like that. Each player is represented in the game by a soldier. The soldier is indicated on the map by one of these standings here, one of these standing pieces here. 2 movement factors. 1 is used when the soldier is unwounded and 1 when the soldier is wounded. There are several things in the game that may wound the soldier. When that happens, you place the wound marker underneath the soldier and you use the reduced movement factor. Each soldier is also represented by a card that indicates status and capability of the soldier. Each soldier has a rifle, which is assigned randomly at the beginning of the game. When you shoot your rifle, you flip the marker to indicate that the rifle needs to be reloaded. When you reload it, you do like that. It is ready again, and the rifle marker indicates the range of the rifle. At the beginning of the game, each soldier also draws a random skill from a pool of available ones. You read the instruction and they tell you what the selected skill does for you, how your soldier is able to do different things from other soldiers. Each soldier also has a gun. It starts loaded. Each time that you fire your gun, you simply indicate the ammo that you spent by moving that marker down, and of course you put it back up there when you reload. Also, soldiers have heroic actions, sort of like cinematic actions. Each player receives one at the beginning of the game. You can play it to use it, but it is only once. You can be super cool, super awesome in the game, but alas, only once. Another thing, as we are talking about cards, is event cards. When in combat, players roll a double, the game is immediately interrupted. You draw a card, and sometimes you retain the card and you can use it later. Sometimes you resolve it immediately and the event takes place immediately. Just a way to add a little more variety, a little more surprises to the game. And of course there are zombies in the game too, because that's kind of the point. You need to fight them. There are 3 types of zombies. There's one, the Zebs. These are not particularly dangerous. They're pretty slow. They have a movement factor of 1. You have Revenants, just like zombies. They're Zebs, but with a movement factor of 2. These people only have melee combat. They try to come at you, to grapple you, and to eat you. And then you have these guys, which are much smarter, the Glorious Dead. These are dangerous. 2 movement factors, 1 that they use when they are unwounded and 1 that they use when they are wounded. And alas, range. Range for what? For the rifle. These guys have rifles and they seem to be smart enough to use them to fire at you. When they are unwounded, they can fire at you and the range is 7. When they're wounded, luckily enough, they don't fire anymore. Player aid, pretty well done, if not that there is only 1 player aid for both the Union and the undead player, the AI, so you have to keep flipping that. Wouldn't have minded to have 2 player aids. And yeah, you have the turn track, which tells you what happens pretty much. In some scenarios you may have an artillery attack phase, you resolve that, then each player selects an action. You may have to engage in melee combat if a zombie is grappling you, or if not, then you can choose to engage in combat. You can fire a weapon or reload a weapon, you can move or half move and fire. This is pretty standard stuff. If you are adjacent to an enemy, you can melee against that enemy. Fire, you need to be in range and you need to have a line of sight to the enemy. Rifles have different ranges. Guns all have a range of 2. And you can choose to only move, or you can choose to move and fire, but in that case you're firing with a penalty. Combat, to resolve combat, whether it is melee or fire, it is very, very simple. You simply take into account all of the modifiers that apply to the situation. There are different sets of modifiers, one for close combat and one for ranged combat. And as you can see, for example, positive modifiers for close range, negative modifiers for moving and firing, or for terrain, obstacles, and different modifiers based on the situation in which the close combat may be taking place. You roll 2 dice, you apply the modifiers that apply to your situation, you use the column that applies to the combat that you are resolving, fire or melee, and you cross-reference the column with the modified die result, and you simply apply the result. The enemy may be wounded, then you place a wounded marker there, maybe stunned, then you place a halo on the enemy. I really like these little halos here that represent the different status situations that you can place on the enemies or on your soldier, depending on what's happening, to indicate different type of things that may apply to to the character. I like the idea of hanging those halos there. The enemy may be, again, stunned, wounded, destroyed. You may be able to break a grapple if you're grappled. You may be able to stun the opponent. Very simple, very basic idea. So all soldiers take their actions, then you have a housekeeping phase, but then alas, it is time for the enemies, for the Confederate undead to act. And, well, they pretty much act in a basic fashion. The enemies that do not have range combat come close to you. They move closer. They move close to the closest soldier. If there are enemies that are equally distant, then you roll a die to determine randomly. The Zebs move first and they move by 1. The Revenant move next and they move by 2. And you're allowed to cheat a little bit. As long as you're following the restriction that the zombies are moving against you, you can move these slow zombies in such a way that they will block the line of sight of the Glorious Dead. They always move in this order: Zebs, Revenants, and Glorious Dead. So the Glorious Dead act last, and hopefully they will not have a line of sight to you when it is their time to act, because their action sequence, the sequence of possible actions, is a little more complicated for them. If they have a loaded rifle and they're not wounded and they have a line of sight to you, they'll fire. If they have an unloaded rifle and they're not wounded, that means they can still fire, then they will load. If they cannot fire, they will move either to get a line of sight to you to fire next turn, or if they cannot fire at all, then they will just move to come against you, and they will act as normal zombies. They will simply try to use melee against you if they cannot fire anymore. When they are fighting against you, they will grapple you. You indicate a status by using that marker, and of course then you need to break the grapple. It is pretty bad, and that's pretty much how it works. They move and or attack. The attack for the zombies is resolved in the same way as the system that the soldiers use. 2 dice, modifiers that apply to different types of combat, you use the appropriate column, cross-reference the result, read the result, apply the result. Grappled, wounded, pinned, nothing happens, etc., etc., etc. If a wounded soldier is wounded again, he's killed. Yes, you can take 2 wounds, well, kind of 1 wound and be alive, the second one kills you. Interesting enough, soldiers that are killed may turn. You take the ammo marker of the soldier that was just killed, you turn it to the RIP side, which is kind of cute. You place it there on the turning track, then each turn you move that down by 1 space on that track, and each turn you also roll a die, and if you roll higher than the number that that marker is at, the soldier that died earlier in the game comes back as a zombie. And so that's how the game works. Players alternate activating their soldiers, then the zombies do their stuff, try to destroy you. Then it's back to the players that try to achieve their goals, and the game continues like this until either the players achieve the goal and they all win, in case it is a cooperative game, in case you're playing the game cooperatively. Otherwise, you play the game until one of the players emerges as the winner, in case you are playing the game competitively. The theme. Well, the theme is strange, unusual, but clearly is fun and is full of possibilities. The theme, frankly, is what attracted me to start to It made me want to try this game. I knew nothing about the mechanics, but I wanted to see American Civil War soldiers fighting against zombies. I thought that was a fun idea. And the theme is there. The art creates the theme. The art, I think, plays a huge role in giving a thematic sense. And the art is pretty pleasant, it's pretty nice. Other things I feel a little more generic, but you can still see some specifically ACW things in there. For example, the fact that you need to reload your single-shot rifle. I shot one of them at an historical park in Indiana a couple of years ago. I saw how it works to reload those things. Yes, it's a laborious process, and yes, that is captured in the game. And you have things like that, but nothing major. It still feels a little bit of a generic man versus zombie thing. You can't create too much variety there anyways. But thematically, the game is interesting enough. Mechanically, and in terms of gameplay, well, the map is a little limited. You do not have much room. That doesn't give you a lot of options where to go. You can exploit terrain, but there's just a wall and a fence. Not much there either. Each player only has 1 soldier, so you will move your soldier, you will do your 1 action, turn happens, take your other action, things like that. You can play solo and maneuver multiple soldiers, but very often in any case the decision is fairly obvious. There are some tough decisions here and there, some push your luck situations, but not always like that. So in there, the fact the game feels a little claustrophobic because the map is so small and you do not have a ton of maneuvering options. But this is no big deal compared to what is a little bit of a problem for me. And in terms of the flow and the options, how they come together in what to me was a little bit of a bland impression, a bland experience. It just felt move, shoot, or move or shoot, the opponent do something, take 1 action, the opponent come to you, you take 1 action. It felt a little repetitive, it felt a little too linear. Even when you play small war games, you have sometimes, say, even very small war games, even a Napoleon 20 type of game, you have 10 units and you can create synergies. You have 10 units that you're maneuvering, the opponent has some 10 units. There's more depth there, there's more more of a tactical feel, there are more tactical options than I'm moving, one guy, 3 zombies are coming at me, I'm moving, they keep coming, I fire, they keep coming, I move, they keep coming. It just felt a little too linear, too straightforward. There were interesting situations, not situations that were incredibly interesting, and the overall feel wasn't that of a strong narrative. The comparison that came to mind to me is what a system of games that I like very much, which is the Dungeons and Dragons games, Wrath of Ashardalon, Castle Ravenloft, Legend of Drizzt. I like those games very much, and actually, thinking about it, the core system is not that different. In those games you do move, attack, and then the monsters do something, you keep moving, the monsters do something. But around that system that is so linear, there is a lot more theme in there, there are a lot more situations that may happen. You have a huge variety of monsters that act in different ways, challenging different ways by presenting different type of threats to you. The dungeon changes depending on the scenario and depending on how you go around and you move and you explore. There is just a more interesting use of space, especially when it comes to Legend of Drizzt, which of the 3 is the one with the most interesting terrain. In that system I find that there is a good balance between a straightforward, very lean core of rules and a very simple engine, and yet a lot of narrative that is generated by that. In this game I had a little bit of a problem with the fact that you still have the core basic system of rules, but the experience was a little too basic too, a little too bland, not too exciting. So there's an advantage that the game is much shorter than one of the D&D games. If I only have a little amount of time and I want a game of that type, this could be an option. But overall I just feel that when I will want to play a game of this type, I will stick to the D&D games. This game has a lot of good ideas, maybe with some expansions and some extra things will become all it can be. As of now I just feel there's just something that is lacking in there. It's a little bit of a pity, but that's my experience, that's how I felt after playing this game.